So we're diving into this really extraordinary true story today.
Yeah, it really challenges, our ideas about life and death, resilience.
Totally. Imagine being declared dead, right?
Yeah,
For 90 minutes after a catastrophic accident.
90 minutes. And then waking up, going through years of just unbelievable pain and recovery,
Right.
and then sharing with the world that you've actually been to heaven.
That's the journey we're exploring.
It's the journey of Don Piper. January 18th, 1989. He experienced death, saw heaven, and then this miraculous, incredibly difficult return to Earth.
And our deep dive today, it comes straight from Don Piper's book, 90 Minutes in Heaven, a true story of death and life. He wrote it with Cecil Murphy.
Yep.
So we'll be looking at, the accident details, his description of the afterlife, which is just amazing.
Yeah.
And then that really, really grueling journey back to physical life.
And what's so striking is how this whole thing just profoundly reshaped his view on pain, on purpose, and the power of faith.
It's interesting, too, you mentioned, even the publishers were cautious at first.
Absolutely. Understandably cautious about his claims. But the book, well, it became this huge source of comfort for so many people dealing with their own suffering.
So our mission here is really to pull out the key insights, the most important nuggets from this firsthand account.
Right. Give you a shortcut, sort of, to understanding the implications. What does an experience like this mean for how we think about life, death, human strength?
We'll look for the surprising facts, the deep emotional stuff, the spiritual truths in there. So let's get into how it all started.
Okay, so Don Piper's day, January 18th, 1989, it began pretty ordinarily.
Right.
He was just riding his red Ford Escort back from a church conference near Lake Livingston, heading towards his church in Alvin, near Houston.
A mundane drive. But then there were these two small things, almost subconscious decisions he made.
Crucial decisions, yeah. First, he put on his seatbelt. Apparently, he'd just gotten a ticket for not wearing one, and the ticket was sitting right there on the passenger seat. A reminder.
Wow. Okay, so he buckled up. What was the second thing?
His route. He chose to take the Gulf Freeway instead of Highway 59.
And that led him where?
Onto this narrow, two-lane bridge over the Trinity River. A bit of a dangerous spot, actually.
It's just eerie, isn't it, how these tiny choices line things up?
Exactly. And those choices had immediate, devastating consequences. Around 11:45 that morning, just as he was nearing the end of the bridge, an 18-wheeler truck crossed the center line.
Oh, no.
It was driven by an unlicensed inmate, actually, and it hit Don's little Escort head-on.
Head-on on a bridge?
Yeah. The combined speed, they estimated, was about 110 miles per hour. It just crushed his car between the truck and the bridge railing.
Unbelievable. And the paramedics?
They got there fast, within minutes. But they found no pulse.
Nothing.
Nothing. They declared him dead right there. By 11:45 a.m., they covered him with a tarp. The report said, killed instantly.
Killed instantly. But that wasn't the end of the story, obviously.
Not even close.
Yeah.
This is where it gets, well, unbelievable.
Okay.
So the scene at the bridge, it's chaos, right? EMTs are dealing with other injuries from the crash. Traffic's backed up for miles.
Right. Total standstill.
And stuck in that traffic is another man, Dick Wunrecker. He's a Baptist preacher, also coming from the same conference.
Okay.
And he says he felt this incredibly strong push from God telling him to pray for the dead man under the tarp.
Pray for someone already declared dead.
Yeah. And he even had his own, theological issues with that idea, praying for the dead.
But he did it anyway. What did the EMTs think?
They scoffed at him, basically told him the man was gone. But Dick persisted. He actually crawled into the wreckage of the car.
Into the car?
Yeah. Reached over the back seat, put his hand on Don's shoulder, and just started praying intensely for 90 minutes.
90 minutes praying for it.
Specifically, he prayed for unseen injuries, internal injuries, things nobody could see.
Wow. And then
Don Piper started to sing.
he started singing after being dead for 90 minutes.
Singing What a Friend We Have in Jesus, right along with Dick Wunrecker. And Don said he felt this strong, powerful hand clasping his own.
A hand.
Yeah. This was the moment, 90 minutes after he was pronounced dead, that he came back to earthly life.
What did Dick Wunrecker do? He must have been stunned.
Absolutely stunned. He scrambled out of that car yelling, "The man's alive. He's not dead. He's alive."
He had to convince the EMTs.
Yeah, they were skeptical, obviously. But he got them to check again, and sure enough, they found a pulse.
That is just incredible. The power of that prayer, that persistence.
Truly profound.
So, okay, he's back. But what was that transition like? Going from being, well, dead and in this accident scene to whatever happened next. Did he feel confused? Pain?
He describes it very clearly. No long tunnel, like you sometimes hear about.
Yeah.
No fading sensation.
Instant.
Instantaneous. One moment, he remembers seeing the bridge, the rain. The very next moment, he says he was enveloped by this brilliant light. And then, just like that, he was standing in heaven.
Standing in heaven. Wow. What did he see? What was it like?
He saw people. A large crowd, he said. Joyful. And he knew them.
Knew them.
Yeah, people he'd known on Earth who had died during his lifetime. He called them his celestial welcoming committee, like they were waiting for him.
Who did he recognize?
His grandfather, Joe Colbeth, looking strong and healthy. His great-grandmother, Hattie Mann, who he remembered as frail and wrinkled on Earth.
Yeah.
She was standing tall, strong, sparkling teeth. He said all the ravages of living on Earth were just gone.
That's amazing. And the feeling.
Overwhelming love. He said he felt more loved than ever before, a kind of perfect love coming from everyone there. He even saw his childhood friend, Mike Wood.
The friend who had influenced his faith.
The very one. Mike's death had deeply affected Don years earlier. But seeing him there, all that grief just vanished. Instantly.
So it wasn't just seeing them, it was a healing experience too. What about the environment itself? Heaven.
A feast for the senses, as he describes it. The light was brilliantly intense. The colors were vivid, dazzling, beyond anything on Earth. Everything seemed to glow.
And sound. Was it quiet?
No, not quiet. Music was the most vivid thing for him. He heard what he called a holy swoosh of wings, like angels maybe, and continuous music.
Music.
Hundreds of songs, he said, all praising God, all being sung at the same time, but somehow without chaos, each song distinct.
Oh.
No sad songs, only hymns of praise, and he felt like he was part of the music. He says even now, sometimes, he hears faint echoes of it.
That's incredible. And touch, feeling.
He mentioned powerful embraces from the people welcoming him. The overall feeling was just total bliss, perfection, feeling fully alive in a way he'd never felt on Earth.
Did time exist? Did he think about Earth?
Time had no meaning there. He also said he just knew things intuitively, didn't need to ask questions, and interestingly, no awareness or regret about what he left behind. Complete peace.
So he's surrounded by loved ones, light, music. Where is he heading?
He felt he was moving toward something even brighter, an increasing light. He sensed he was being ushered into the presence of God.
Towards God's presence. Did he see anything specific?
He described approaching this magnificent gate, ornate, made of literal gold, he said, with walls that just stretched out of sight. And through the gate, he could see a city with paved streets inside.
A city? Did he want to go in?
Oh, absolutely. He felt this deep yearning to step through the gate. He described it as feeling he was about to realize the yearning of every human heart.
That's powerful.
He also thought that if he had actually seen God directly, seen his face, he never would have wanted to come back.
But he didn't step through.
Just as he was about to, just as he felt he'd become part of the choir, listening to that heavenly music, he suddenly left. It was abrupt.
Ripped away from that, back to what?
Back to the horrific reality of his body in that crushed car.
The contrast must have been jarring beyond belief.
Absolutely. He described his body as mangled. His right leg was crushed. His left leg was shattered. They later found 4.5 inches of his femur were just gone. Never found.
Missing.
No idea. Just gone. His left arm was dislocated, barely attached. He was bleeding massively, but somehow, medically, inexplicably, he didn't bleed out completely.
What else? The impact.
The steering wheel had slammed into his chest. Blood was seeping from his eyes, ears, nose. He was covered in shards of glass. The EMTs initially assumed he must have had massive head injuries, totally scrambled insides.
So he's alive, but barely. Where did they take him first?
Well, that was part of the ordeal. The ambulance took him to these small rural clinics first. They basically took one look and said he was past hope. Couldn't handle his injuries. They just sent him away.
Sent away. So he's critically injured.
Critically injured, and they're just passing him on. Finally, they started an 80-mile ambulance ride to Herman Hospital, the big trauma center in Houston.
80 miles? That must have been agonizing.
Yeah, it was. He said about 10 minutes into that ride, the pain hit him. Full force. Despite whatever medication they gave him, he described it as every part of my body groaned in agony. And he couldn't pass out. He had to stay conscious through it.
Just unimaginable. So he gets to Herman Hospital. What did the doctors find?
This is another one of those miracle points in the story. Despite that horrific impact, the doctors were amazed. He had no head injuries, none, and no serious thoracic injuries, meaning his vital internal organs were okay.
How is that possible after being hit by an 18-wheeler?
Don attributes it directly to Dick Onrecker's specific prayers for unseen internal injuries.
Incredible. But his limbs were still destroyed.
Oh, yeah. Badly. They considered amputating his left leg. But one doctor, Dr. Tom Grider, who specialized in really bizarre trauma,
Okay.
he decided to try an experimental procedure called the Elizarov device.
The Elizarov, what is this?
It's this external fixator, basically a big stainless steel frame built around the limb. It had wires drilled right through his bone and skin.
Built through the bone. Oh my God.
Yeah. He had one on his leg, weighed about 30 pounds, and one on his arm, about 20 pounds.
And what does it do?
The idea is to regrow missing bone. They had to turn these tiny screws on the device every single day, less than half a millimeter turn,
To do what?
to slowly, agonizingly stretch the existing bones apart, creating a gap where new bone could gradually grow in, to replace those missing 4.5 inches of femur.
That sounds medieval. The pain must have been.
He describes it as hideous, constant, excruciating pain from the device itself, on top of the injury pain.
And his recovery wasn't smooth sailing even then, right? There was more.
No, not smooth at all. On his 6th day in the hospital, he developed double pneumonia. He was near death again.
Double pneumonia after all that.
Yeah. But his best friend, David Gentiles, organized an all-night prayer vigil, people praying constantly for him. The next day, the pneumonia was gone. Just gone. They also discovered a mistake with his breathing tube around that time and fixed it. More answered prayers, Don believes.
It's just one thing after another. How long was he actually in the hospital?
It was a marathon. 12 days in the ICU. Then 105 days total in St. Luke's Hospital.
Over 3 months.
And then, after leaving the hospital, he was bedridden at home for another 13 months.
13 months in bed.
Yeah. In total, he went through 34 separate surgeries.
34.
He used to joke, calling himself Robo-Preacher, because of all the metalwork the Elizarov frames.
You have to find some humor, I guess, but the underlying reality is just brutal.
Absolutely brutal, both physically and emotionally.
Tell me about the emotional toll on him, on his family.
It was immense. He mentioned his mother fainted when she first saw him in the ICU. His father apparently offered to trade places with him if he could.
Oh, wow.
Don himself talked about lying there, hearing other patients screaming in pain from their injuries.
Yeah.
And then eventually realizing that some of those screams were his own, screaming out in agony without even knowing it sometimes.
That's horrifying. And despite all the prayers, the miracles, he still struggled.
Deeply. He often wished he could just die and go back to heaven. That peace, that perfection he'd experienced, compared to this constant agony.
The contrast was just too much.
Exactly. He wrestled constantly with the why questions. Why me? Why bring me back from that perfect place to this brokenness, this pain?
Which led to depression.
Severe, prolonged depression. He desperately wanted to return to heaven. And on top of that, he couldn't or wouldn't talk about the heaven experience itself.
Why not? Not even to his wife, Eva.
No. He said it felt too sacred, too personal, too intimate. And he was genuinely afraid people would think he was, nuts.
Or that it was just a hallucination from the trauma.
Right, or the medication, so he kept it locked inside. He even resisted any kind of psychological help, called the hospital psychiatrists stealth shrinks.
He felt they couldn't understand.
Pretty much. He figured more medicine wouldn't help, and how could any earthly therapist comprehend what he'd seen and felt? It created this real internal conflict, the spiritual memory versus the physical nightmare.
So he's isolating himself in this pain and this sacred memory. How did he start to come out of that?
There was a specific turning point. A visitor, J.B. Perkins, a retired minister.
Okay, what do you say?
He basically confronted Don, called him out on his self-pity and his pride. He told Don he was actually being selfish.
Selfish how?
Perkins said, by refusing help, by pushing people away, Don was cheating them out of the chance to show their love and care for him. He said, it's the only thing they have to offer you, and you're taking that gift away from them.
Wow. That's a really different way to look at it. Not seeing help as a burden on others, but as a gift from them.
Exactly. It flipped the script for Don. It made him realize receiving help wasn't weakness, it was allowing others to participate in his recovery, to express their love.
So did he start accepting help then?
Slowly, yeah. He made small steps. He asked a church member visiting him for a magazine. Then he asked someone else for a strawberry milkshake.
Small things.
Tiny things. But he saw the genuine joy it brought those people to be able to do something for him. It started to break down that wall of isolation.
That's a crucial shift. But the depression was still there.
Yes, The deep despair was still gripping him
Mm-hmm.
until another key moment, a spiritual breakthrough.
Okay.
It happened one night in the hospital, couldn't sleep, probably between 3 and 5 a.m. He was just listening to Christian music on cassette tapes,
Right.
and a song called Praise the Lord came on. There's a line in it about chains falling away when we turn ourselves over to praise.
Chains falling away.
And Don looked down at his own literal chains, the Elizarov frame, the metal cage on his leg and arm.
Wow.
It hit him powerfully.
Mm.
Then another song, We Are the Reason, made him realize that the purpose of living wasn't just to avoid pain, but to give everything, even the pain, to Christ.
So this realization, listening to music, what effect did it have?
He describes it as a profound release. Suddenly, the despair lifted. He said his mental chains had broken, and he had this deep conviction that depression would never again afflict him.
Just like that. Without therapy or medication.
That's how he describes it. A spiritual intervention that broke the depression's hold. It was about finding meaning, a higher purpose, even within the suffering, integrating the pain, instead of just fighting it.
So he's starting to heal emotionally, spiritually, but he still had to deal with the physical reality, his new normal.
Right. And that was hard. He grieved for his old self, his healthy body. He missed simple things, skiing, sure, but even just squatting down to talk eye to eye with a child.
Or reaching for change at a drive-through window easily, things you take for granted.
Exactly. But then he read an article that changed his perspective again.
What was it about?
It was about a blind man who found peace, not by focusing on what he'd lost, but by making a list of everything he could still do, no matter how small.
Focusing on the abilities, not the disabilities.
Precisely. So Don adopted that mindset. He started focusing on what he could do, even with his limitations. Realized he wasn't helpless. He decided to magnify it to the max, as he put it.
That's such a powerful lesson in adaptation. What about his family through all this? His wife, Eva, must have been carrying an incredible load.
Immense. Eva showed extraordinary strength. She took over everything, kids, house, finances. She nearly lost her job, but her colleagues actually donated their sick days to her so she could be with Don.
That's amazing community support.
It really is.
Yeah.
And she had to deal with Don's needs, his pain, his difficult moods sometimes. But through it all, the book says she learned to make decisions, found this new level of confidence. The crisis forged her in new ways, too.
And the kids, they were young.
Very young. The twin boys were only 8. They had to live with their grandparents for a while. His daughter, Nicole, who was 12, lived with another family for 6 months.
6 months away from home, that's tough.
Incredibly tough. They even had a psychologist use a dummy to prepare the kids for what their dad would look like with all the metalwork and injuries.
Oh, wow. How did they cope?
It varied. Chris, one twin, would apparently come home from school and just hug his dad every day. Joe, the other twin, felt cheated out of doing normal dad stuff. Nicole saw her dad as vulnerable, but ultimately spiritually stronger.
Did it damage the family?
Interestingly, they all said, looking back, that the whole ordeal actually brought the family closer together and deepened everyone's faith. Shared trauma reshaping bonds again.
So Don starts healing physically, emotionally. He finds this new purpose. When did he go back to ministry, back to church?
His first time back in his church was after 13 months. He was still in a wheelchair, still had the Elizarov device on.
Must have been a huge moment.
It was. When he wheeled in, the whole congregation just burst into spontaneous applause.
How did he feel about that?
He said he felt guilty at first, like the applause was for him. But then he felt God tell him, they're not applauding for you. Meaning, it was for God's work, for answered prayer.
Did he preach?
No, he only said 4 words that day.
Oh.
He just looked at the congregation and said, you prayed, I'm here.
Powerful. Simple.
Very. But he was still reluctant to share the heaven part of the story.
Right, because it was so personal, and he worried about reactions. What changed that?
His best friend, David Gentiles, really pushed him. David argued that the experience wasn't just for Don himself. It was a gift, an encouragement meant for other people too.
That it would be selfish not to share it.
Exactly. That reframed it for Don. He realized keeping it private might actually be the selfish thing. So he started, cautiously, to share.
And around this time, there was another revelation about the accident itself, about the hand he felt.
Yes, this was over a year later. He was talking with Dick Wanrecker, the preacher who prayed for him, and Dick's wife, Anita.
Okay.
And Anita corrected Don's memory. She pointed out, given where Dick was positioned praying over the back seat and the way Don's arm was pinned and injured,
Right.
Dick physically couldn't have reached down and clasped Don's hand like Don remembered.
It wasn't Dick's hand.
Don realized it must have been something else, an angelic presence perhaps, Another layer of miracle, confirming God's direct presence and intervention during those 90 minutes.
Wow, that adds even more depth. So he starts sharing his story. How did people react? How did it start helping others?
In many ways, for people grieving, his description of a joyful, real heaven provided immense comfort and assurance. He talks about speaking to people who have lost loved ones, often seeing tears in their eyes, but tears of hope.
Knowing their loved ones are in a good place.
Exactly. And then for people physically suffering, especially those also using fixators like the Elizarov,
Yeah.
he made a point to visit them. People like a police officer named Brad Turpin, or a young man from his former youth group, Chad Vowell, who also had a fixator.
What was that like?
He could share his own experience, offer practical tips, but more importantly, just offer empathy from someone who truly knew the pain. He called it a small fraternity, and none of us joined it by choice. He could tell them genuinely, you will get better. That gave them hope.
That shared experience is powerful. Did his story impact people who weren't already believers?
Definitely. It served as a powerful testimony. There's a story about a car dealer, Gary Emmons, finding a tape of Don's story in a used car he bought. It deeply affected him.
Wow.
Another one about a terminally ill woman. Someone gave her Don's tape. She listened to it, found faith right before she died, and apparently his description of heaven was the last thing she heard.
That's incredible impact.
Even Dick Onrecker, the preacher who prays, said the whole experience gave him much more boldness to share his faith, seeing such a direct answer to prayer.
And there was that story about the young student Walter Foster.
Yeah, Walter Foster, a young LSU student who became fascinated by Don's story after hearing him speak. Walter was apparently really excited about the idea of heaven. Very shortly after, Walter unexpectedly died from a heart attack. Just suddenly gone.
Terrible.
But his friends, who knew how much Don's story had meant to Walter, found immense comfort in it. It helped them process their grief. They even created a prayer garden in Walter's memory at LSU, inspired by the hope Don's testimony provided. It shows that ripple effect.
So looking at Don Piper today, or at least when the book was written, he's living with permanent injuries, right?
Yes. Continued physical pain. His leg is shorter, causing hip problems. He has a gimpy elbow, arthritis, constant reminders of the accident.
But his outlook on death.
Completely changed. He says he doesn't fear death at all. In fact, he longs to return to the heaven he glimpsed.
But he feels he still has work to do here.
Exactly. He believes God has a specific purpose for keeping him on earth, to use his experience, his pain, to comfort others, to share the hope he received. He feels he's serving his purpose here on earth, knowing his final reservations for heaven are secure.
It's a total transformation from that initial despair and wanting to die.
Complete transformation into a life driven by purpose found through pain.
When you look at his account compared to other near-death experiences, does he talk about that? How does his fit in?
He does touch on it. He acknowledges similarities in some accounts he's heard.
Like the light, the feeling of peace.
Right. But he also expresses some skepticism, feeling that some other stories can sound a bit rehearsed, maybe, lacking the profound, life-altering depth that his own experience had.
He feels his was uniquely real.
He insists it was more real than anything I've ever experienced on earth, and he often connects it back to biblical descriptions of heaven, like Jesus talking about preparing a place, affirming its literal reality for him. His view is very much grounded in his Christian faith.
So recapping this incredible journey, Don Piper's story really does connect suffering, faith, and purpose in a powerful way.
Absolutely. From that horrific accident to paradise, then back to a shattered body, but eventually a renewed spirit. It shows how our worst trials can somehow become our greatest platforms, our missions.
And the key takeaway for you, listening to this deep dive, it's more than just a mind-bending story.
Right. It's really a testament to things like the power of persistent prayer, the tangible reality of hope beyond this life, at least as Don experienced it, and that potential we all have to transform even agonizing circumstances into service for others.
Which leads to that final provocative thought. Don Piper himself poses the question, can you lose someone if you know where she is?
It's a profound question. It really pushes you to think. If you genuinely believe in a real, joyful afterlife like the one Don describes, how does that belief change things for you right now?
How does it change the way you handle loss, the way you navigate your own suffering, and maybe how you live out your purpose while you're here?
Lots to think about there. A powerful story with deep implications.